I'm Mac, 35, a software developer from Seattle with a Mercedes GLE. I saved years to buy. Tonight at my father's 65th birthday, everything changed. My sister Jessica has always been the golden child, but what happened crossed all boundaries. The family gathering started normally, until Dad made an announcement that left me speechless. Before I tell you how my family tried to steal my car, drop a comment where you're watching from, hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to see their faces when I revealed what was in this folder. Growing up in Portland, I was always the odd one out. Middle-class neighborhood, decent schools, but inside our home, the dynamic was clear. Jessica got the sun. I lived in the shadows. My parents, Harold and Eleanor Bennett, weren't bad people, just unbalanced in their affections. Dad worked as a bank manager, Mom as a part-time teacher, and they provided well enough. But the emotional economy in our household had a clear favorite, Jessica. From the beginning, the pattern was set. When we were kids, Jessica got the bigger bedroom with the window view, despite being 3 years younger. At Christmas, she'd receive the premium gifts while mine seemed like afterthoughts. My sister played soccer, and my parents never missed a game. Meanwhile, when I made the debate team and competed in state finals, they sent their regrets because Jessica had a minor cold and needed attention. I worked my ass off through high school, earning a partial scholarship to Washington State. College wasn't easy. I juggled 20 hours of work weekly at the campus IT center while maintaining my GPA. Those 4 years taught me self-reliance, because financial help from home came with strings attached, usually related to Jessica's more immediate needs. After graduation, I clawed my way into the tech industry, starting at entry level and working 80-hour weeks to prove myself. Now, I'm a senior software architect at Cloudscape Tech, managing a team of 12 developers and earning 6 figures. It took 15 years of grinding, saving, and strategic career moves to build the life I have. Jessica? She attended community college sporadically before dropping out to find herself. My parents funded 3 different career attempts: photography, interior design, and jewelry making. None lasted longer than 6 months, yet each failure was reframed as valuable exploration. When she met Bradley Turner at 24, my parents practically threw a parade. He worked in insurance, steady but nothing spectacular, yet they acted like Jessica had landed a Rockefeller. 2 kids quickly followed Emma, now 7, and Aiden, 5. With grandchildren in the picture, any remaining balance in our parents' attention completely disappeared. My promotions were acknowledged with quick texts, while Jessica's children's finger paintings earned framed positions of honor in the living room. Despite everything, I tried maintaining relationships. I sent thoughtful gifts, called regularly, and visited on major holidays. I even helped Jessica financially a few times when she came asking, paying their security deposit when they moved, covering Bradley's car repair when they were short. That car, the warning sign I ignored. 4 years ago, Bradley bought a new Honda Accord. Nothing fancy, but reliable transportation for their growing family. 6 months later, when Jessica was running errands with the kids, she called me hysterical. She'd been bumped from behind at a stoplight, causing minor damage. Could I help with the repair costs, since their deductible was high? I transferred $1,500 without question. Only later did I learn from my cousin that Jessica had actually backed into a pole while texting, but she'd fed everyone a different story. My Mercedes GLE wasn't just transportation, it represented everything I'd worked for. Charcoal exterior, cream leather interior, all the premium packages. I researched for months, saved for years, and finally bought it last year. The day I drove it off the lot was one of pure satisfaction. I'd earned this through my own efforts. No handouts, no shortcuts. Jessica saw it differently. The first time she spotted it, she rolled her eyes and muttered something about compensating. At family dinners, she'd make pointed comments about wasteful spending and how that money could have helped family. The irony of her criticizing financial decisions was apparently lost on her. What my family never saw was how meticulously I documented everything. Call it a programmer's instinct, but I kept records, texts, emails, bank transfers, photographs. I compiled everything in a folder, not really knowing why except some innate sense that someday evidence would matter more than emotions in the Bennett family. Uncle Ron was the exception in our family dynamic. Dad's older brother by 2 years, he'd always seen through the favoritism. He'd pull me aside at family gatherings with a wink and say, "Your time's coming, kid. Just keep building." When I got promoted or achieved something significant, his congratulations were genuine and enthusiastic. Uncle Ron had experienced something similar in his youth, living in Dad's shadow according to family lore, which perhaps explained his empathy toward my situation. As Dad's 65th birthday approached, Mom organized a small family gathering that somehow included 30 people. Jessica called me 3 times to confirm I was bringing my fancy car because some of the extended family wanted to see it. Something in her tone triggered my suspicions, but I dismissed them as paranoia born from years of disappointment. I didn't realize then that the Mercedes would become the centerpiece of a confrontation 15 years in the making. The day of Dad's birthday arrived with picture-perfect weather, clear blue September sky. Temperature in the mid-70s, slight breeze rustling the changing leaves. I drove the 80 miles from Seattle to my parents' suburban Tacoma home with the windows down, enjoying what I'd later recognize as the last moments of peace before the storm. I deliberately arrived early, knowing Jessica would likely be late as usual. The house looked the same as always, 2-story colonial with fresh white paint and navy shutters, immaculate lawn, and seasonal wreaths on the doors. Mom's touch was everywhere, perfect and pristine, much like the family image she worked so hard to maintain. I parked my Mercedes at the far edge of the circular driveway, a strategic choice to minimize the risk of door dings or bumper taps from less careful relatives. The charcoal paint gleamed under the afternoon sun, nearly 6 months of ownership, and still the sight of it made me smile. I ran my hand along the hood before heading inside, not knowing it would become the center of tonight's drama. Mom greeted me with her typical brisk hug, affectionate but efficient. "You're early, Mac. Help me set up the drink station." "No, hello, how are you? How was your drive?" Just straight to tasks. Dad was in his den watching golf, emerging only to give me a firm handshake and comment on my casual attire, despite the fact I wore a brand new button-down and pressed chinos. Within 30 minutes, the house began filling with relatives, my father's 2 sisters and their husbands, Mom's brother and his family, cousins from both sides with various spouses and children in tow. Each arrival followed the same pattern: greetings, comments on the beautiful day, gifts placed on the designated table, and inevitable migration to the backyard where Dad held court by the grill. Jessica, Bradley, and the kids arrived 45 minutes late, creating the expected flurry of attention. Emma and Aiden immediately ran wild through the house, fingers sticky with whatever snack they'd been given in the car. Jessica made no attempt to moderate their behavior, instead launching into dramatic tales of traffic and the challenges of getting children ready. I was helping an elderly aunt to a comfortable chair when I heard Jessica's voice rise an octave. "Mac, is that your new car out front? It's even nicer than you described." She stood by the front window, staring out at my Mercedes with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Had it almost 6 months now," I corrected. "But thanks." She twisted a strand of hair around her finger, a childhood habit that emerged when she was plotting something. "It must be so nice having all that space and those safety features." "Our minivan is practically falling apart." Bradley appeared beside her, nodding vigorously. "Those Mercedes SUVs are top-rated for safety. 5 stars in every category, right?" "Something like that," I answered cautiously, noticing how intently they were both staring at my car. The conversation might have continued, but Emma came tearing through with chocolate cake smeared across her face, Aiden close behind wielding a plastic dinosaur like a weapon. Jessica made a half-hearted "kids, settle down" comment before returning to her inspection of my vehicle. Uncle Ron arrived shortly after, his entrance bringing genuine warmth. At 67, he remained robust and sharp, with the same dark hair as Dad but kinder eyes. He embraced me properly, asking specific questions about my recent work project and actually listening to the answers. As we grabbed beers from the cooler, he leaned in close. "Something's brewing, Mac. Harold and Jessica have been on the phone every day this week. Just be prepared." Before I could ask for clarification, Mom was calling everyone to help bring food to the tables set up on the patio. Dinner was an elaborate affair: prime rib, Mom's famous potato casserole, 3 different salads, and an assortment of sides that could feed twice our number. I found myself seated between a second cousin I barely knew and one of Dad's golf buddies, directly across from Jessica and her family. The table arrangement felt deliberate, placing me in plain sight of my sister but far from potential allies like Uncle Ron. Throughout the meal, Jessica peppered the conversation with comments that initially seemed innocent but formed a pattern. "Must be so nice having weekends all to yourself, no responsibilities," she said while cutting Aiden's meat. Later, when discussion turned to my recent business trip, "Some of us don't have the luxury of dropping everything for career advancement." Each comment came with a martyr's smile that made my jaw clench. Bradley joined the campaign with questions about my car's financing. "Did you lease or buy outright? What's the monthly insurance run you? Those premium vehicles must cost a fortune to maintain." Each question more inappropriate than the last, yet delivered with such casualness that objecting would have seemed defensive. Midway through dinner, Dad stood to give a speech, crystal glass of whiskey raised high. He spoke about milestones and legacy, the importance of family values and prioritizing what truly matters in life. "At 65, I've learned what counts isn't what you have, but what you give to those who matter most." His eyes fixed on me during these last words, a look that made my stomach tighten. Mom beamed beside him, adding, "And nothing matters more than supporting family, especially the next generation." Her meaningful glance toward Emma and Aiden wasn't subtle. I noticed Jessica nodding emphatically, while Bradley studied my reaction from behind his wineglass. Uncle Ron frowned slightly, eyes moving between Dad and me, clearly picking up on the undercurrents. The birthday cake and presents portion of the evening passed in a blur of performative excitement. Dad received golf equipment, books, and various other gifts with appropriate gratitude, though none sparked the genuine smile I remembered from childhood. When he opened my gift, a rare first edition of his favorite author I'd spent months tracking down, he offered a brief, thoughtful "son" before moving to the next package. As dessert plates were being cleared, I overheard Jessica whisper to our mother, "Is now a good time?" Mom's answering nod sent a chill down my spine. Whatever Uncle Ron had warned about was about to unfold. "Before everyone starts heading out," Dad announced, standing at the head of the cleared dinner table, "we need to have a quick family meeting. Immediate family only, please." The extended relatives took the hint, gathering their belongings and making farewell rounds. Within 15 minutes, the house had emptied except for my parents, Jessica, Bradley, the kids, Uncle Ron, who had been specifically asked to stay by my father, and me. "Let's move to the living room," Mom suggested, already shepherding everyone toward the formal sitting area we rarely used, except for Christmas photos and serious discussions. The room felt stiff and staged, matching furniture too uncomfortable for regular use, arranged in a perfect conversational square. Family photos covered the walls, the Jessica to Mac ratio approximately 5:1. Dad took his usual position in the leather armchair that functioned as a throne. Mom perched on its matching ottoman, with Jessica and Bradley settling on the sofa, kids sprawled on the floor with iPads. Uncle Ron chose a corner chair slightly removed from the main arrangement. I remained standing until everyone was seated, then took the remaining armchair across from my father. "Mac," Dad began, using his bank manager voice authoritative with artificial warmth, "we wanted to discuss something important with you, a matter that affects the whole family." Jessica straightened, barely containing a smile. Bradley placed a hand on her knee in what looked like a restraining gesture. "As you know," Dad continued, "family has always been our highest priority. Supporting each other, making sacrifices when necessary for the greater good of the Bennetts." I nodded cautiously, already feeling the trap being laid. "Your sister has been having a difficult time lately." He gestured toward Jessica, who immediately adopted a weary expression. "The minivan is giving them trouble, constantly in the shop. With 2 growing children and all their activities, reliable transportation isn't a luxury, it's a necessity." My stomach dropped as I began to see where this was heading. "We've been discussing this situation as a family," Mom added, conveniently ignoring that I hadn't been included in any discussions, "and we believe we've found the perfect solution." Dad leaned forward, hands clasped as if in prayer. "Your Mercedes is sitting there, barely used by a single man with no real need for such an extravagant vehicle. Meanwhile, your sister struggles to safely transport her children." Jessica nodded vigorously. "The other day, I couldn't even get Aiden to his doctor's appointment because the van wouldn't start." "So it's decided," Dad announced with finality. "Your sister gets your luxury SUV. She has kids. She needs it far more than you do." The room fell silent, all eyes on me. Jessica looked triumphant, already mentally redecorating my car. Bradley had the decency to appear slightly uncomfortable. Mom nodded encouragingly, waiting for my immediate compliance. I felt physically ill, like I'd been punched. You're asking me to give Jessica my car? The car I saved for years to buy? Just hand it over because she wants it? Not wants, needs, Dad corrected sharply. This isn't about material possessions, Mac. It's about family responsibility. The safety features alone would make such a difference for the children, Mom added. You can always buy another one. I stared at them, unable to process the audacity. Buy another $70,000 vehicle? Just like that? Jessica rolled her eyes dramatically. Here we go with the money talk. Always keeping score. It's not keeping score to want to keep something I worked for, I replied, struggling to maintain composure. I've already told my yoga group about upgrading our family vehicle. Jessica continued as if I hadn't spoken. Emma's so excited about the fancy lights inside. You told people I was giving you my car before even asking me. I couldn't hide my incredulity. We assumed you'd want to help your sister, Dad said, voice hardening. That's what family does. I noticed Uncle Ron shift uncomfortably in his seat, frowning deeply but remaining silent for now. I do help, I countered. I've helped with rent deposits, car repairs, birthday gifts for the kids. Ancient history, Jessica cut in. We're talking about now. My family's needs now. The decision has been made, Dad stated flatly. We expect the keys before you leave tonight. Bradley finally spoke up. We'd cover the insurance transfer, of course. And we could give you the minivan until you get something else. The generosity of offering me their broken-down vehicle in exchange for my luxury SUV nearly caused me to laugh hysterically. I already made a space in the garage, Jessica added, then hesitated before continuing. And I may have borrowed your spare key earlier, just to check the features. You went through my things? I felt violated on yet another level. Don't be so dramatic, Mom chided. Your room is still part of this house. My room? I haven't lived here in over a decade. Emma looked up from her iPad. Mommy said we're getting Uncle Mac's pretty car. She said you're giving it to us because you love us. Actually, I never agreed to. The children are counting on this, Mom interjected. You wouldn't want to disappoint them. I glanced around the room, feeling cornered. Jessica smug, parents unmovable, children unwitting pawns. Only Uncle Ron's expression reflected anything resembling understanding of the absurdity unfolding. Let me get this straight, I said slowly. You invited me here, to Dad's birthday, to ambush me with a demand to hand over my car that I worked years to afford because Jessica wants it. And I'm supposed to just agree because… family? You don't need such an expensive car, Dad replied dismissively. What does a single man need all that space for anyway? You're being selfish. Selfish? I repeated, the word hitting like a slap. How is wanting to keep something I earned selfish? Because family needs come before individual wants, Mom stated, with the certainty of someone reciting scripture. Your sister has children to consider. Children she chose to have, I noted, immediately regretting the words when Jessica's face contorted with rage. How dare you, she gasped. You're saying my children aren't important? No, I'm saying your children aren't my financial responsibility, I clarified, but the damage was done. This is why you're alone, Jessica hissed. Who would want someone so cold and calculating, so unwilling to help family? Uncle Ron finally spoke up. Harold, Eleanor, don't you think this is a bit much? Asking Mac to give up his vehicle is a major request, not a simple favor. Dad waved away the comment. Stay out of this, Ron. This is about the Bennett family taking care of our own. By taking from one to give to another? Uncle Ron countered. By redistributing resources where they're most needed, Dad replied sternly. The conversation was rapidly deteriorating, and I could feel my carefully maintained composure slipping. I understand Jessica needs reliable transportation, I said, attempting a diplomatic approach, but surely there are other solutions besides taking my car. Taking, Dad's voice rose. We're asking you to share with your less fortunate sister. Less fortunate? I couldn't contain my disbelief. I worked through college while Jessica dropped out multiple times with no consequences. I built my career through effort and determination, while she bounced between hobbies you funded. How exactly is she less fortunate? Jessica's face flushed crimson. Not everyone measures life by corporate success and material possessions. I've been raising children, which is more important than any job. A choice you made, I reminded her. a choice I've supported numerous times financially. Dad slammed his hand on the armrest. Enough about money. This conversation is about doing what's right for the family. The family, I repeated slowly. Or just Jessica? Mom's expression turned wounded. Mac, how can you say such a thing? We've always treated you and your sister equally. The absurdity of that statement nearly left me speechless. Equally? Mom, you can't possibly believe that. We gave you both everything you needed, she insisted. Jessica got braces. I needed them too, but was told there wasn't enough money. Jessica got a car at 16. I took the bus until I could save for my own at 20. Jessica's college tuition was paid in full despite her dropping out repeatedly. I worked 30 hours a week to supplement my partial scholarship. The memories tumbled out, years of inequity condensed into seconds. Ancient history, Dad dismissed with a wave. We're discussing the present situation. The situation where, once again, I'm expected to sacrifice while Jessica gets what she wants. I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Jessica stood suddenly, tears springing to her eyes on command, a skill she'd perfected since childhood. I have 2 children to take care of. 2 precious lives that depend on safe transportation. Then buy a safe car within your means, I suggested, instead of expecting me to hand over mine. You owe us! Jessica's voice escalated to a near shout. After everything this family has done for you. Done for me? I echoed incredulously. Like what exactly? Dad rose now too, his face reddening. We put a roof over your head, food in your mouth, clothes on your back. You fulfilled your basic legal obligations as parents, I interrupted. That's not a debt I owe. How dare you, Mom gasped. After all the sacrifices. What sacrifices, Mom? Please, enlighten me about all you've sacrificed specifically for me that you haven't done tenfold for Jessica. The room fell uncomfortably silent. Bradley stared at his shoes. The children, sensing the tension, had abandoned their devices and were watching wide-eyed. Jessica broke the silence, her voice deadly calm. I already told the kids they're getting a new car. Emma's class project this week was drawing her family, and she drew us in your Mercedes. She pulled a crayon drawing from her purse, holding it up like evidence in a trial. Would you disappoint a child? That's manipulation, Jessica, and you know it. It's reality, she countered. Plus, I've already taken measurements for the car seats. When did you? I started, then realized. You used the key you took without permission. She shrugged unapologetically. I needed to make sure everything would fit. The car seats fit perfectly, Bradley added, as if this settled everything. And there's room for all their sports equipment in the back. I shook my head, amazed at the entitlement. You've been planning this for weeks, haven't you? This whole birthday dinner was just a setup. No one denied it, which was confirmation enough. I want my spare key back, I said firmly, extending my hand toward Jessica. She exchanged glances with our father. I don't think that's necessary. It's my property, Jessica. The key. The car. Mine. Don't be childish, Dad snapped. Possession is less important than need. Says who? I challenged. Says me, he thundered, the facade of reasonableness finally cracking. I'm still the head of this family, and what I say goes. The absurdity of a 65-year-old man believing he could dictate what a 35-year-old independent adult did with his legally owned property was almost laughable. Almost. Dad, I respect you, but you don't have authority over my possessions. Emma chose this moment to run to Jessica, whining, Mommy, when can we go in the new car? You promised ice cream in Uncle Mac's car. Soon, sweetie, Jessica assured her, shooting me a triumphant look. Uncle Mac is just being difficult. I'm not being difficult. I'm declining to give away my $70,000 vehicle. Always about the money, Bradley muttered, just loud enough to be heard. It's about respect, I corrected. Respect for my work, my choices, and my property. Jessica's eyes narrowed dangerously. You know what? Keep your precious car. Who needs it anyway? We'll just continue struggling with an unsafe vehicle for the children. I hope you sleep well, knowing your niece and nephew are riding in a death trap because Uncle Mac loves his fancy car more than them. Low blow, Jess, Uncle Ron interjected. That's emotional blackmail. Stay out of this, Ron, Dad barked. No, I don't think I will, Uncle Ron replied calmly. This has gone far enough. You're asking Mac to make an unreasonable sacrifice while belittling him for objecting. Mom tried a different approach, her voice honeyed. Mac, sweetie, we know you've worked hard. We're so proud of your success. But family looks out for family. Your sister is struggling, and you're in a position to help. I am helping, I replied firmly. I helped last month when Jessica called needing money for the kids' school supplies. I helped at Christmas when Bradley wanted that golf membership. I help regularly, willingly, and generously. What I won't do is give away my car. You don't need it, Jessica exploded. What does a single guy with no prospects need with a family vehicle anyway? It's not like you'll ever have kids to put in it. The cruel jab hit its mark. My recent breakup had been painful, partly because my ex had decided she wanted someone more family-oriented. Jessica knew this, having pried the details from Mom. Jessica, Uncle Ron admonished, but the damage was done. It's true, she continued mercilessly. He's married to his job. No woman wants that. The car is wasted on him. I felt something shift inside me, years of accumulated resentment crystallizing into resolve. You know what? This conversation is over. I'm leaving. With my car. With both keys. Dad stepped between me and the door. Not until we resolve this. It is resolved, I stated firmly. My answer is no. You ungrateful, Dad began. But Jessica cut him off with a triumphant cry. I found something. She was holding up a small object, the spare key fob to my Mercedes. It must have fallen out of his pocket. Give that back, I demanded, moving toward her. She darted away, grinning. Mom, Dad, I think Mac's being unreasonable. He has 2 keys. He only needs 1. I think this one should stay with us for emergencies. Jessica, that's theft, I said plainly. It's family helping family, Mom corrected, nodding approvingly at Jessica. That's it. I pulled out my phone. Return my property, or I'm calling the police. The room erupted. Dad shouting about family loyalty, Mom crying, Jessica clutching the key to her chest, the children beginning to wail in confusion, Bradley trying unsuccessfully to calm everyone. Above the chaos, Dad's voice thundered. It's decided. Your sister gets your luxury SUV, she has kids. Everyone fell silent, the declaration hanging in the air like a judge's verdict. Jessica smiled victoriously. Mom nodded in agreement. Bradley began making placating gestures, as if to say, let's all calm down and accept this. Uncle Ron looked at me with sympathy but remained silent, perhaps believing intervention would only escalate things further. I felt cornered, outnumbered, and betrayed by the people who should have supported me most. The familiar feeling of being less valued, less important than Jessica washed over me, a tide I'd been swimming against my entire life. The living room had fallen into that peculiar silence that follows an explosion, heavy, charged, expectant. My father stood rigid, jaw set in the expression that had intimidated me throughout childhood. My mother's hands were clasped tightly in her lap, knuckles white. Jessica clutched my spare key, triumph brightening her features. Everyone was nodding in agreement with Dad's proclamation, the matter seemingly settled in their minds. Jessica even reached toward me, palm up, clearly expecting me to surrender my primary key as well. I felt something deep inside shift like tectonic plates realigning after years of pressure. A strange calm settled over me. You know what? I said quietly, my voice level. Before I hand anything over, there's something I think everyone should see. Jessica's smile faltered slightly as I reached for my laptop bag leaning against the sofa. I extracted a manila folder unremarkable in appearance, but meticulously organized within. Funny you should mention, kids, I continued, opening the folder on the coffee table. Here's what she did with his last car. Uncle Ron moved closer, peering at the documents I was arranging. His sharp intake of breath was audible in the silent room. My God, he murmured. What is this? Dad demanded, but the authority in his voice had diminished. Evidence, I replied simply. 6 months ago, Jessica borrowed Bradley's Honda Accord while her van was being serviced. Bradley frowned. The minor fender bender? The one where someone hit you at a stoplight? I slid a police report across the table. There was no other driver, Bradley. Jessica was texting while driving on Elmwood Avenue. She ran a red light and collided with a guardrail. That's not, Jessica began, but I cut her off by producing photographs. These are pictures of the actual damage. Note the impact angle and paint transfer, consistent with hitting a guardrail, not being rear-ended as Jessica claimed. Bradley picked up the photos, studying them with growing confusion. But you said. She lied, I stated flatly. But that's not the worst part. I laid out the next document, a medical report. Emma complained of neck pain that evening. Instead of taking her for evaluation, Jessica gave her children's pain reliever and told her to stop exaggerating. You did what? Bradley's voice rose sharply. Jessica's face had drained of color. She was fine. It was nothing. According to her pediatrician, whom I spoke with after noticing Emma favoring her neck at the Easter gathering, she had mild whiplash that fortunately resolved without treatment. But it could have been much worse. Uncle Ron was now examining the documents closely. These are dated right after you told everyone Bradley's car needed $1,500 in repairs from a hit and run. Repairs I paid for, I added, under false pretenses. Bradley stood abruptly, hands shaking. You put our children in danger, then lied about it, to everyone? For months? Jessica's composure cracked. It wasn't like that. I didn't want to worry anyone. You were texting while driving with our kids in the car. Bradley's voice had risen to a shout. Then you hid a potential injury. I produced another document, the insurance claim. She filed this claiming an unknown vehicle struck the rear of the car. That's insurance fraud, by the way. How did you get these? Jessica demanded, tears streaming now. The police report is public record. Bradley gave me access to your insurance documents when I offered to help with the claim. The medical information came from conversations with Emma and her doctor. The photographs. I hesitated, then continued. I took those myself when I noticed the damage didn't match Jessica's story. I've worked enough accident cases in my company's insurance division to recognize inconsistencies. My mother had gone very pale. Mac, surely you're exaggerating. Jessica wouldn't endanger the children. The evidence suggests otherwise, Uncle Ron said grimly. This police report is quite clear. Blood alcohol test was administered at the scene. You were drinking? Bradley turned to Jessica, incredulous. Just one glass of wine at lunch with Stephanie, Jessica protested. It was nothing. One glass plus texting while driving with our children in the car, Bradley corrected, his voice deadly quiet. My father had remained unusually silent, his face working through a complex series of emotions. Why are you bringing this up now? He finally demanded. To embarrass your sister? To distract from the car issue? I'm bringing it up because you're asking me to hand over an expensive, powerful vehicle to someone who has demonstrated irresponsibility behind the wheel, particularly with children present. I turned to Jessica. You want my Mercedes because it's nice, not because it's safe. If safety were your primary concern, you'd drive more carefully in whatever vehicle you have. Jessica lunged for the folder, but I anticipated the move and pulled it back. You've been keeping a file on me? She shrieked. What kind of creepy, vindictive person does that? The kind who's tired of being taken advantage of, I replied evenly. The kind who's learned that with this family, documentation matters more than words. Bradley was scrolling through his phone, his expression darkening. The body shop receipt doesn't match what you told me either. The damages listed here aren't consistent with a rear-end collision. You're going to take his side? Jessica turned on her husband, voice cracking. I'm concerned about the children's safety, Bradley responded, his voice strained, and about being lied to. My father attempted to regain control of the situation. This is ancient history. We're discussing the car arrangement now. No, we're not, I said firmly. Because there is no arrangement. I'm not giving Jessica my car. Not after seeing how she handled Bradley's. You self-righteous, Jessica began, but Bradley cut her off. Jess, stop. Let's focus on what matters here. You put Emma and Aiden at risk, then covered it up. Aiden, who had been quietly playing, looked up at the mention of his name. Mommy crashed the car, he said matter-of-factly. She told us not to tell Daddy because he'd be mad. The room fell silent again. Out of the mouths of babes, Uncle Ron murmured. Bradley knelt beside his son. When was this, buddy? When Mommy hit the silver pole and Emma hurt her neck, Mommy said it was our secret. Jessica sank onto the sofa, all pretense abandoned. It wasn't I didn't, she broke off, unable to continue. I hadn't expected this additional confirmation, but it only reinforced what the evidence already showed. Jessica had endangered her children, lied about it, and coached them to maintain her deception. Dad looked genuinely shaken for the first time. Jessica, is this true? Her silence was answer enough. Bradley's face had transformed into something I'd never seen before, a mixture of fury and deep concern. He turned to Jessica, voice tight with controlled rage. "You lied about the accident. You coached our children to lie. You concealed Emma's injury." "It wasn't serious," Jessica protested, mascara streaming down her cheeks. "I was protecting everyone." "Protecting yourself," Bradley corrected, "at our children's expense." He gathered Emma and Aiden close. "Were there other accidents we don't know about?" Jessica's hesitation spoke volumes. "Oh my God," Bradley whispered. "There were, weren't there?" "Just little fender benders," she admitted reluctantly. "Nothing major." "With the children in the car?" Bradley demanded. Her silence was damning. Uncle Ron had moved to stand beside me, a solid presence of support. "Harold," he addressed my father, "I think it's time to acknowledge the real issue here." Dad's authoritative posture had deflated significantly. "What issue is that?" "The pattern," Uncle Ron replied. "The lifelong pattern of enabling Jessica at Mac's expense." "That's not," Mom began, but Uncle Ron cut her off with unusual firmness. "It is, Eleanor. It always has been. You've consistently prioritized Jessica's wants over Mac's needs, and it's created this situation where she believes she's entitled to whatever she desires, including her brother's vehicle. We've treated them equally," Mom insisted, but her voice lacked conviction. I reached into my briefcase again and withdrew a second folder thinner than the first but equally significant. "I wasn't planning to share this tonight," I said quietly, "but I think it's relevant to the conversation." From the folder, I extracted several bank statements and receipts, laying them carefully on the table. Last year, Dad needed additional treatments after his cardiac episode. Treatments insurance wouldn't cover. Who paid the $22,000 for those? Dad's eyes widened in surprise. "The insurance eventually covered most of it." "No," I corrected gently. "I covered it. All of it. I made the arrangements to appear as though insurance had reconsidered, to spare your pride." Mom's hand flew to her mouth. "But you said—" "I said it was handled, and it was by me." I turned a page in the folder. "The roof repairs last summer? The ones Dad bragged about negotiating down to a manageable cost? I covered the remaining $8,000. The silence in the room had taken on a different quality, stunned realization rather than tense standoff. "Why wouldn't you tell us?" Mom asked, bewildered. "Because you've never acknowledged my contributions," I answered honestly. "Because Jessica gets praised for bringing store-bought cookies to dinner, while my financial support goes unmentioned. I stopped expecting recognition years ago." Jessica's expression had morphed from defensive to confused. "You paid for Dad's treatments? Why wouldn't you say something? Would it have mattered? Would it have changed how you see me? How any of you see me?" Uncle Ron placed a hand on my shoulder. "I knew about some of this. Mac has been quietly supporting this family for years, expecting nothing in return except perhaps basic respect which he hasn't received." Bradley was still processing the revelations about Jessica's driving, but he looked up sharply at this. "You've been helping financially? Beyond what we knew about?" I nodded. "College funds for Emma and Aiden. $5,000 each, added annually. I wanted them to have opportunities without strings attached." "I didn't know," Bradley said softly, genuine surprise in his voice. "No one was supposed to know," I replied. "I didn't do it for recognition." "Then why bring it up now?" Dad demanded, though his voice had lost its edge. "Because you called me selfish," I answered simply. "Because you accused me of not caring about family. Because you tried to take something I've earned through hard work, using emotional manipulation and false claims about my character." Jessica had gone very still, the spare key to my Mercedes forgotten in her lap. "I've never asked anything of any of you," I continued, my voice steady. "I've given freely, willingly, without expectation of gratitude. The one thing I won't give is my car, not because of its monetary value, but because of the principle. Because I refuse to continue enabling the idea that Jessica is entitled to whatever she wants, regardless of who it belongs to." Uncle Ron nodded approvingly. "It's about time someone said it." Dad's face had gone from angry to confused to something resembling shame. "I didn't know about your financial help." "You weren't supposed to," I repeated. "That wasn't the point." "Then what is the point?" Mom asked, sounding genuinely lost. "The point is respect," I said firmly. "Respect for boundaries. Respect for my choices and my property. The point is acknowledging that I'm an adult who has built a life through hard work and discipline, not someone you can bully into surrendering his possessions because Jessica wants them." Bradley stood suddenly, gathering his children's things. We're leaving. Jessica, we need to talk privately about your driving and what happens next." His tone made clear this would be no pleasant conversation. Jessica rose to follow, panic replacing her earlier confidence. "Bradley, wait!" "No," he cut her off. "No more excuses. No more manipulation. The children's safety isn't negotiable." He turned to me, expression grave. "Thank you for being honest, even when it wasn't comfortable. I had no idea about any of this." He extended his hand, which I shook after a moment's hesitation. As they prepared to leave, Jessica paused beside me, shoulders slumped in defeat. Without meeting my eyes, she placed my spare key on the table and whispered, "I'm sorry," before following her husband and children out. The door closed behind them, leaving a heavy silence in the room. Dad cleared his throat awkwardly. "Son, not now," I interrupted. "I think we all need time to process." Uncle Ron nodded in agreement. Wise decision. Some conversations are better after reflection. He stood and embraced me tightly. "I'm proud of you," he murmured. "It took courage to stand your ground." As Uncle Ron prepared to leave, he paused beside my father's chair. "Harold, do you remember when our father favored you? How that felt to me. History repeats when we don't learn from it." He squeezed Dad's shoulder once before walking out, leaving my father looking more shaken than I'd ever seen him. Mom began gathering dishes with mechanical movements, her usual response to emotional upheaval. Dad stared silently at the document still spread across the coffee table, evidence of both Jessica's deception and my unacknowledged support. "I should go," I said quietly, collecting my folders. "Mac." Dad's voice stopped me at the doorway, sounding strangely uncertain. "I didn't know." "I know, Dad," I replied, suddenly exhausted. "That's part of the problem." I drove home that night with both keys to my Mercedes, the weight of years of unspoken resentment finally lifted from my shoulders. 4 weeks passed before I saw any of my family again. 4 weeks of processing, reflecting, and healing from a lifetime of patterns laid bare in a single evening. I declined calls from my parents initially, needing space to sort through my thoughts and emotions. Jessica sent a single text message, a genuine apology, it seemed, without excuses or justifications. Uncle Ron became my anchor during this time. We met regularly at a coffee shop halfway between our homes, his wisdom and perspective helping me navigate the aftermath. Family healing doesn't happen overnight, he told me over steaming mugs of coffee one crisp October morning. What happened at Harold's birthday was decades in the making. I nodded, watching fallen leaves dance across the parking lot outside. I never intended to cause such chaos. Uncle Ron chuckled softly. "Sometimes chaos is necessary for change. Your father and I had a similar reckoning when we were younger. History repeats itself in families unless someone has the courage to break the cycle." "What happened between you two?" I asked, realizing I'd never heard the full story. "Our father, your grandfather, favored Harold from the day he was born. The golden child who could do no wrong, while I was the perpetual disappointment." His eyes crinkled with the wisdom of years. "Sound familiar?" "Too familiar," I admitted. "The difference is, I never confronted it directly. I just distanced myself, built my own life apart from the family. It worked for me, but the pattern continued with you and Jessica." He sipped his coffee thoughtfully. "You took a braver path." I wasn't sure brave was the right word for my confrontation, but I appreciated his perspective. Over the following weeks, the family dynamic shifted in subtle but significant ways. My mother called not to pressure me to reconcile, but to listen perhaps for the first time to my experiences growing up in Jessica's shadow. The conversation was difficult, tearful, but ultimately healing. "I never realized," she said repeatedly, genuine remorse in her voice. "We thought we were being fair. Perception and reality rarely align in families," I replied, finding compassion where resentment had previously lived. My father was more complicated. His entire identity was built around being the family patriarch, the decision-maker whose word was law. Having that authority challenged successfully had shaken his self-concept. But even he was making efforts, awkward as they were. "Your mother tells me I should ask about your recent project," he said stiffly during our first phone conversation. "The cloud computing thing." He listened with uncharacteristic attention as I explained my work, even asking follow-up questions that suggested genuine interest. The most profound changes came from unexpected quarters. Bradley called 2 weeks after the confrontation, asking to meet for lunch. Over sandwiches at a quiet deli, he shared the aftermath from his perspective. "Jessica and I are in counseling," he explained, looking tired but determined. "Both couples and individual therapy. The driving incident wasn't isolated. It was part of a pattern of recklessness and entitlement I'd been overlooking." "How are the kids?" I asked, genuinely concerned for my niece and nephew. "Adjusting. We're being honest with them, in age-appropriate ways. Emma's relieved, actually. Keeping secrets was weighing on her." He paused, struggling with his next words. "I want to thank you for forcing this into the open. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I never intended to hurt anyone," I said honestly. "I know." He hesitated again. "Jessica wanted me to ask. She's giving me space to process everything, so she's not ready to meet yet, but she wanted me to ask if someday you might be open to rebuilding your relationship, on healthier terms." I considered this carefully. "Someday," I agreed, "when we've both had time to heal." Tell her I appreciate the question. The most meaningful changes, though, were internal. For years, I'd measured my worth by my family's validation that never came. The confrontation forced me to recognize that I didn't need their approval to be whole. My value didn't depend on Jessica's recognition or my parents' favor. 3 months after that fateful birthday dinner, we attempted a family gathering again Thanksgiving at Uncle Ron's house, neutral territory. The atmosphere was tentative, everyone carefully navigating new boundaries and relationships. Jessica arrived without her usual dramatic entrance, greeting me with a subdued nod rather than performative affection. "Your car looks good," she said simply. "You take excellent care of it." "Thanks," I replied, recognizing the comment for what it was: acknowledgement of my right to my possessions. "We bought a certified pre-owned Honda Pilot," she added. "Safe, reliable, within our budget." The absence of complaint or martyrdom in her statement spoke volumes about her ongoing work. Dad approached as Jessica moved inside, his hands thrust awkwardly in his pockets. "Son," he began, then paused as if recalibrating. "Mac, I've been doing some thinking." I waited, giving him space to continue. "Ron reminded me how our father played favorites. I never saw the parallel. He looked directly at me, perhaps truly seeing me for the first time in years. I'm not good at apologies, but I was wrong. About the car. About a lot of things." The acknowledgement wasn't eloquent, but from my father, it was revolutionary. Inside, Mom had arranged the dining room, thoughtfully placed cards, creating balanced seating rather than the usual hierarchy that placed Jessica in the position of honor. As we settled into this new, more equitable family configuration, Uncle Ron caught my eye and raised his glass in a subtle toast. We had miles to go in healing generations of dysfunction, but the journey had begun. Driving home that evening in my Mercedes, the car that had become an unexpected catalyst for change, I reflected on the lessons of the past months. True family isn't about possession or control, but respect and boundaries. Self-worth can't be granted by others. It must be claimed for oneself. And sometimes, standing your ground isn't selfish, it's necessary for everyone's growth. The folder that had sparked such chaos now rested, closed, in my home office, a reminder that truth, however uncomfortable, is ultimately freeing. I no longer documented my contributions to the family, no longer kept receipts as evidence of my worth. Those patterns, like so many others, were being consciously broken. As the highway stretched before me, I felt something I hadn't experienced in family contexts before: peace. Not the peace of surrender or appeasement, but the authentic peace that comes from living in truth. Have you ever had to stand up to family pressure when they crossed a line? Share your story in the comments below. What boundaries did you have to set? And how did your family respond? Remember to like and subscribe if you appreciated this journey. Trust me, there are more family stories where this came from. Thanks for listening, and remember, sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are the ones most worth defending.